Great. Rachel, let us know when we're good to go.
We are live.
Okay. Tracy, go for it. Oh, you're muted.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Tracy Smith, the facilitator. I'm Tracy Smith, the facilitator for this evening. Welcome to the PCEF Grant Committee meeting. Our meeting is going to be from 6 to 8 o'clock tonight. I would just like to remind you of the virtual meeting participation kind of checklist that we have, guidelines. Committee meetings are open to the public. You're invited to give comments at about 6:05 p.m. There will be a break at 7 o'clock, and that will be a 10-minute break. During that time, you will see a screen that says there's a break in process, but there will be no online discussion at that time. Our guidelines for our virtual meeting this evening, the chat box, please introduce yourself and for noting your public comment interest. All other times, the chat is for PCEF staff only. I know in past meetings, folks will ask questions and we're just not able to address questions during the meeting. For committee members and presenters, please raise your hand and I'll call on you. For the video portion is just to be on videos for committee members and presenters. The microphone for public members will be muted, and if everyone could stay muted until you're called on if you want to share comments. And this meeting is being recorded, and we have closed captioning as well. Our agenda, we will have, after I go over an overview, will be followed by introductions. As I said, at 6:05, there is public comment. At 6:12, there'll be approval of meeting minutes. At 6:15, there'll be a collaborating for climate action. There's a timeline update that will be reviewed. At 6:20, we'll do a CIP, Climate Investment Plan Amendment Proposal discussion. 7 o'clock, I said 10-minute break. It'll be a 5-minute break. 7:05, we'll come back from the break. Now that says here, Sam, is it I'm confused. Is it a 5 or 10-minute break?
Whatever you want it to be.
Okay, it's either going to be 5 or 10 minutes, folks. And after that, we'll come back to the CIP amendment proposal discussion. And at 8 o'clock, the meeting will close. And from here, we will do introductions. And I'm going to start, Robin, just in order with my screen. I'll start with you.
Good evening, Robin Wang, PCEF committee member. And I apologize, I will need to leave at around 6:45 tonight.
Thanks for letting us know, Robin. Ranfis?
Good evening, Ranfis Gengenovia Toro, he, him, committee member.
Meg?
Hey all, Megan Horst, she, her, co-chair and committee member.
Tracy?
Good evening, everyone. Tracy Scott, committee member.
Faith?
Hi, everyone. Faith Graham, committee member, she, her pronouns.
D'Angelo?
Good evening. I'm not sure what's going on. There we go. Good evening. D'Angelo Moaning, committee member. Glad to see everybody.
All right. And I believe Alicia has joined the meeting. Alicia, if you could introduce yourself and say hello, please.
Good evening, everyone. Alicia Chapman, committee member, she, her pronouns.
And Sam, I'll end with you.
All right. Good evening, folks. I'm Sam Brasso.
Sam, I can't hear you.
Oh, I may need to call in. You can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
You're very quiet, very quiet.
I'm going to call in because this clearly isn't working, but Sam Brasso, him, program manager with the PCEF team, and I'll turn it to Rachel and I'll dial in.
All right, so I believe Sam said he's going to call in, and then Sam will introduce the folks who are presenting prior to them making their presentation. At this point, if anyone has public comment. Please indicate your interest in providing public comment by raising your hand or indicate your interest through the Zoom chat function. If you are joining by phone, please enter *9 to indicate your interest in providing public comment, as well as limiting your comments to 3 minutes. And I know that Micah Meskel has signed up for comment. So Micah, I will start with you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, committee. My name is Micah Meskel, he, him pronouns. I'm with the Bird Alliance of Oregon, where I'm the Assistant Director of Urban Conservation and following PCEF for a good 6-7 years at this point. And in checking the meeting agenda, as I often do the morning of the committee meeting, I was struck in a duality of experiencing Groundhog's Day level of frustration, as I'm sure the committee is today, in the process or lack thereof with some proposals that are included in here, with city leadership forwarding a recommendation to this committee at the last minute, and at the same time, after reading through that, being really excited about what was being proposed. And I'm not sure how or if I need to speak more to that duality, other than that I hope the transition that happens on January 1st and with a new mayor and a new budget process, that it shifts the dynamic so the committee can sort of lead some of these conversations. So while I'm here, I do just want to take a moment to share my excitement for some of these investments as allocations, as I think they're substantive and transformative in lots of ways. I think no-brainer increasing the funding allocation for community grants, which is core to PCEF. Again, yeah, really help meet the future, current and future demands. Expanding the reach of the popular program like Cooling Portland is a no-brainer, and I hope that this continues over time so the program can meet the demand of the city's most vulnerable and then work towards extending the program more widely. Doubling the funding for the Collaborating for Climate Action initiative has the opportunity to see more of those transformational projects come to reality and begin benefiting Portlanders. And lastly, funding the proposed or funding for lifting up the Portland's Blue-Green Deal really has the opportunity to move the city into the forefront of how it can manage and restore its green infrastructure to center our community's resilience. And integrating and empowering the Chief Sustainability Officer to create a climate adaptation office is an integral piece to this and can really allow the office and PCEF and this committee to help inform the city's broader resiliency work. This was a longtime vision of my late colleague, Bob Salinger, who knew the complexities of the city's environmental work and really saw an opportunity in this government transition to combine a lot of it and really get way more bang for our buck and the ability to really layer in PCEF funds and PCEF sort of centering of impact to communities really as a transformational opportunity. And the restoration work it proposes, the Green Jobs Corps pilot, alignment with the Chief Sustainability Officer and the new resilient Watershed Resilience Division is just, yeah, it is. As frustrated as I am about process, I can't hold back from my support for that and these other pieces. So I'll just leave it with that.
Thank you, Micah. I checked the chat and didn't see that anyone else wanted to share public comments. So, oh, I see there is a Babs V. Babs, go ahead.
Whoopsie. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first I will second, third, and fourth, everything that I think his name was Micah, who just spoke. Yay. And I did read through all the things that he mentioned. I will say that as a lifelong Portlander, 76 years old in Northeast Portland. I am cautiously optimistic about the transition moving forward. I know it's going to be a few steps forward, steps to the side, steps back, however, 7 of the city council members that were elected are folks that I fully supported, not just in my district. And I talked with them all in person, specifically about environmental issues. And I must say, I am also a supporter of the new mayor. So again, that cautious optimism, I see a vision that's developing, and I will do whatever I can to promote this process moving forward. Thank you again to all of you. I've attended numerous meetings of PCEF and continually am in awe of your determination, your dedication, your courage, the fact that you never give up, even against all odds. Thank you.
Thank you, Babs. Now we'll have Lenny D.
Hello? You got me there?
Yes, Lenny, we can hear you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, great. I'm involved with Friends of PCEF and been involved intimately with PCEF since 2015, which is getting near 10 years now. I support a lot of the programs that are coming up for a vote here, but one thing I want to say is next time there's a chunk of money, whether it's a new CIP or additional funds that are available, I think we need to start thinking a little differently in trying to get programs out the general public can access. And 2 in particular are really expanding the e-bike program, which is barely scratching the surface of what it could do, and making HVAC available to the general public with different discounts available for different levels of income. Both those things would help us build the political support for PCEF that we're going to need. Unfortunately, half of the council that was elected this time is going to come up for vote in two years. So there's no telling what we're going to have to deal with coming down the pike. So building as much public support as possible for PCEF is absolutely essential. Thank you for all your hard work. Take care, y'all.
Thank you, Lenny.
Sure thing.
Okay, I don't see anyone else that has public comment to share. At this time, I'm going to move on from public comment to committee members. I would like to check in with you to see if you had an opportunity to review the minutes from September 4th, September 19th, and October 29th. And if everyone has reviewed the minutes, then if someone would like to make a proposal to approve them, please.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Alicia. I should have probably raised my hand.
I moved to accept the minutes from last meeting.
A second, please.
I second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, I see they've been approved. Okay, all right, now we'll be moving on to collaborating for climate action, the timeline update.
Okay, can you all hear me now?
I can hear you, Sam.
Okay.
Yes.
Good, thank you. Good evening, folks. What we're gonna do, I'm gonna spend just a little bit of time on the collaborating for climate action timeline, as that's another thing that will be coming up here in a December meeting that we are working on scheduling with you all right now. And unfortunately, we've got Alicia and D'Angelo as part of our review panel, so they know the timelines that we're working with. But it's just to give a quick update for you all, as well as members of the public, that we're busy actively moving forward on our collaborating for climate action proposals. We closed that out in receiving the full applications on October 29th, some early review, and then brought together our review panels who are currently doing their review and reviewing the proposals through the end of next week. we will turn them around and have panel meetings that first week of December, before which we rapidly turn around and bring them to you all. So we're going to be coming in pretty hot on that week of December 6th, and we expect to schedule small group meetings with you all that first week of December, just to tee you up for what's coming up. All with the expectation of getting to, and this is the reason we're moving at this pace, but getting to City Council on December 18th as the last action item for this council. And so we will, if all goes well, we will be back in the new council chambers as part of that action. And so it will be our moment to celebrate with this current council before we shift things, close things down, and arrive fresh and anew in a new year. So that's mainly what I wanted to kind of tee up for you all, folks in the public, that we're moving pretty quick on this, and we're excited about that. And we know that we've got really great projects here on the other side that we're excited to move forward. So that's what I've got here. If you've got any questions, I'm certainly happy to take them.
Megan?
Yeah, Sam, thanks for the update. A couple questions. So will you be, for process wise for the rest of the committee that hasn't been in part of the deliberation, will you be sending stuff to us in advance? One question. And then I know Ranfis and I had requested some ideas about how to have the conversation at our December meeting, including inviting the grantees to talk to us about how they'll be centering community in their applications and the benefits to PCEF priority communities and workers. Could you say more about that? And I would love to hear the rest of the committee be both aware of our request on that and how you're proposing to facilitate it, and just get more committee input into that too.
Yeah, I think I appreciate that, Megan and Renfis, both around the suggestions for that. As you all know, one of the asks, as we've gone back and forth to figure out how to bring this back to the committee, one of the asks from you all were to give an opportunity for the final group of recommended entities to present from you all. So we've already given a heads up to the applicants, that the 10 applicants, that they'd be expected, those that would be recommended would be expected to present with you all. And so I think that's totally fair in terms of asking them to really articulate in their presentations how they're viewing both community, labor, workers, as well as contractors and others as part of their projects. So I think if there's any specific, I think we will take a first go at designing that format once we get to that phase and figure out sort of how many groups we'll have in that recommendation pool. But I welcome any other suggestions like that. I think that's certainly doable.
I think for specifics, I'd be curious to hear, it's D'Angelo and Alicia who are on the review panel, right? So if they, since they're kind of more up and close with the applications right now, perhaps they have some ideas of what like a fruitful, productive, the goal of it, I think from my perspective, is that we as committee are constantly a voice for centering community, centering real residents of Portland, particularly PCEF priority populations, and making sure they don't that they stay a top priority in these funding. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. But yeah, Alicia and D'Angelo, you're closer to the project. So if you have specific ideas of what that could look like, either now or before our December meeting approaches, I'd love to hear from you all.
I can respond, Meg. I think it's a great question. Honestly, there's a bit of a disconnect between when the community members get to the point where we're actually evaluating the proposals and how the proposals end up before us. And I think that's something that we've talked about as a committee, pardon the background noise, and that I've talked to Sam and staff about making sure that we can be more engaged in that initial review and I guess just vetting process. I think that's probably the biggest piece of feedback that I've received from community members too, especially from community members who didn't make it to this round and they're not really, they're not clear why, or they want to have more clarity on what they can do better next time to be able to advance to the review stage. That's something that I think we can do a much better job at.
D'Angelo, how about you?
I think I would just echo Alicia's comments. I really don't have much more to add to that.
Yeah, I hear that. I'm just kind of in conversation mode. I don't know if I should do the hand raising, but I'm just thinking ahead to December, and the idea is that, I mean, I hear that backcasting thing. So a question I have for staff is, are you making yourself available to applicants to explain why they didn't make it and kind of be responsive to that thing Alicia is bringing up? And then knowing that the December meeting will be ones you are moving and proposing, and the whole goal would be, I think one idea Renfrew had is to ask them, the main applicants should be able to show up with their community partners with them as evidence of a strong relationship. I don't know, Ranfis, if you wanted to share more about some thinking there.
Sure. Yeah, I'd say I think as any group would submit an application, I think the pressure to submitting an application is always putting your best foot forward in an application. I think for us as a committee, due diligence requires, hey, like on paper, we're going to take what's at face value, but part of due diligence is also verifying information. I think one of the best ways to do that is if the partnerships are fruitful, if they exist as they say on paper, like having each of the applicants invite their partners to talk about the meaningful partnership, as well as the progress towards a community benefit agreement. So one of the provisions that we additionally passed in the application process was the outcome of not only funding being dispersed, but before funding is dispersed, that there be a community benefit agreement in place. So I think those are like examples of like, what are those conversations? What are those timelines? So, Sam, I know that's kind of, missing in here. I know we're kind of going at the speed that we can, but the important timeline for me is that probably would be both good for the applicants, would be timeline for funding dispersal, as well as timeline for community benefit agreement, and just making sure between us and the committee and staff and applicants, it's clear what the timelines are there for us. Because I think when we initially voted, that was before. But I guess, going back to the questions, I think there's an opportunity for us to clarify, an opportunity to ask about the strength of those partnerships, hearing it not just from the applicant, but from those community partners. And then additionally, cover any additional questions that we thought could help clarify or further paint a picture about the application that we didn't initially fully get, or maybe had outstanding questions. So yeah, that's kind of the spirit of what I was proposing.
I'll just say thank you. I think we can certainly pick this back and think on both just the presentation length, who we've got there, and how to make sure there's sufficient time for folks to both present the content to you all, obviously, and give you a chance to ask questions and have some of that back and forth and get a better sense for the proposals. But I think we can certainly do that. Yep.
And Sam, on the question of communicating with applicants who weren't moved along that Alicia raised?
We've started scheduling those meetings. Most of those meetings will be taking place in the early new year. So we've begun just scheduling those, and I can circle back with Rachel, but we have begun following back up with folks. It's just as a function of getting through where we're at now, but we will be following up with folks, and I think we've got a range of holds and have begun scheduling those with those that didn't make it through. Once we nail those down, we'll be sure to share those dates for folks that want to join alongside us.
Yeah, it'd be great just to get a kind of high level report out, maybe like in February or something, that, of like, were there any reflections on those conversations about how we can improve any future processes?
Yeah, I think we're taking some as staff too. I mean, we can say there's definitively, there's always improvements, and I think we feel fairly good about where we're at, but we've been taking notes, and we'll certainly be sure to capture just other themes or comments that are consistent around improvements that folks would like to see.
Yeah, and Alicia and D'Angelo, I look forward to hearing more from you at the next meeting too. And I know, I see Ramsey's hand up, but before we transition to the next point, I have a comment that's sort of about this, but it's a little broader, and it's just, I know once we get into the next phase, we won't, like, we'll be in the next phase. So I just want to raise something that I think isn't a topic for tonight, but some of our community commenters noted that since we last met, we have a new city council elected and a new mayor elected. And I just want to raise to committee that Ramfis and I have been chatting a little, like, this is probably an opportune moment for our committee to chat about the relationship we want to build with the new city council. And I think there's, on one hand, staff has a relationship to build, but I think we as a committee have a relationship to build. So we have asked for that at our small group meetings. We begin a discussion, and I'd love to probably send you all a text or something, and just like to hear your thoughts on how we might go about welcoming the new council members and just developing a really good relationship about and holding the values of PCEF up. So that's one thing. And another thing we flagged for staff is, we have some newer committee members and we have some vacancies we'll be filling, and we'd like to maybe schedule a longer meeting or retreat sometime in early 2025, partially with this new council onboarding, but also just might be time for us to get to dig in a little bit and do some strategic visioning and relationship building with each other. So those are two not particularly related to this slide, but just high level things to comment on. Ramfis, I saw your hand up. I don't know if I covered that or if you have anything else.
Ramfis, after you, we'll move on to the next section. So go ahead, Ramfis, and then we'll move back over to Sam.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Just quickly, just to wrap up on this timeline and the upcoming meeting for votes, I just want to make sure for us as a committee, that again, as we work with staff here, that as we get to presentation decision, that we feel comfortable with the decisions that we're making. So we're voting that goes before council. So, we are, I think, important voice in raising that bar. Look forward to continue working with you all on that. In terms of Megan's update, I just see this as part of good stewardship as a role between committee members and council. I would just maybe add as well, important for how we steward the relationship with both the outgoing mayor and city council. Just again, I think just an important part of, the relationship stewardship process for us. So just wanted to sort of note that as well. Just our role as a committee, just be proactive in stewarding relationships. Look forward to that conversation. And thank you, Megan, and thank you also, Alicia, for also raising this idea as well.
All right, Sam, we'll now begin with the CIP amendment proposal discussion.
All right, for this next deal, thank you. You'll hear it from myself, then I'll turn it over to our Deputy City Administrator, Donnie Oliveira, and then Eric Engstrom following Donnie. What I want to just start with as we talk about the amendment proposals, briefly just our journey to getting to this point, and then I'll talk a little bit about our work with our budget office. So as you all recall, September 2023, we adopted a climate investment plan that built on about 9 months of work with you all, as well as members of the community, as well as members of our city staff and a whole host of others. Then shortly afterwards, surprise, surprise, as the city council was fine tuning our figures, they teased out that we had an additional $540 million over 5 years that were above and beyond what we had allocated or committed as part of our climate investment plan. And so through that, we worked a process with our city bureau colleagues to come up with the 2024 city climate projects, which we circled back with you all after your recommendation in February of this year. We circled back last meeting on October 29th and gave you an overview of our work that we've done with our city bureau colleagues in terms of fine tuning and refining their proposals as part of developing our programmatic agreements with our bureau partners. And in that time, really following that February 2024 recommendation, we've gone through our budget adoption. We launched the Collaborating for Climate Action funding opportunity. We've taken on a new cohort of community grants. And then we've continued our CIP implementation. And thank you, D'Angelo, for doing double overtime, including getting out our RFP for our Strategic Program 3, which just went through its initial evaluation meeting earlier this week. And then we've continued to do a budget refinement work with our colleagues at the city budget office. And so we're coming before you all today as part of this additional set of amendments, but that's the work leading up to this. And wanted to contextualize that to know that we're continually refining the work that we do both within the city with our partners, but most importantly with our budget team. And one of those things that we've done is we realize there's some errors. We want to make adjustments, and some of those including aligning the end date of our climate investment plan. It was really timed out at September of 2028, which didn't quite line up with our fiscal year. And so as we started the city projects, which we lined those up with a fiscal year, we wanted to right size our budget horizon to align with the city's fiscal year. And so as part of that, that adds an additional nearly a year of revenues coming in. And there's probably a teasing out that we're probably starting out with a higher beginning fund balance of when this plan really began. Additionally, we've continued to refine our projected spending through June of 2029 in order to really understand with more granularity exactly what is the growth of the fund balance, how does that interact with interest. And so what we teased out is, yes, we are accruing more interest because it does take time for programs to ramp up. And we're busy doing that. And then lastly, we're going to continue to work for, and this isn't nailed down, but we're going to continue to work with our city budget office to develop our reserve policy, as that's important to account for our fund management needs, since we have many multi-year projects and they're just, of course, revenue fluctuations. And so that's what I just wanted to give you all the context for really what you're going to hear as you continue. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deputy City Administrator Oliveira to share and take the presentation on moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Hello, everyone. Donnie Oliveira for the record. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the DCA or Deputy City Administrator for Community and Economic Development. I'm really here to sort of pick up where Sam just left off, kind of frame where we're at in our budget process, think about the long-term trajectory of how we establish how PCEF fits into our organizational structure with funding, and sort of kind of ground set around where we're at with the fund at large. And then I'm going to hand it over to Eric and our colleagues from the other bureaus to talk through some of the proposals in front of you. First, I just want to articulate some things that have come up in the past. We're here in November in hopes of getting in front of this committee, which was requested last year, long before our budget is created. We are very much in a conceptual phase in the budget development process. In fact, we probably won't see something like serious until February this year, which is a little bit different than the past as we get ready for a new council. And so this is the first chance for us to kind of say these are some new concepts that are adding. But the more salient point that I want to start with is taking the CIP into account with the additional funding options that we are putting before you tonight. After the CIP is completed, and I'm assuming, we're assuming 100% spend down of the, $1.3 billion that are currently activated with the additional projects that are included. At the end of that 5-year cycle, the fund balance would still have over $400 million. So I just want to offer that we are not on the margins of this fund, and the larger it gets, and at this point it's getting close to being about 15% of the entire city's budget. It's as we project out. It's just changing the way it functions within the city of Portland, and that's not a bad thing, because we're not stripping back like the values and the objectives and the goals of the fund. It's inherently reshaping how the city is doing business, and I think that's really important. I think you're going to hear a little bit more about that from our colleagues. The second piece I just want to offer up contextually is this committee has an outsized role and voice in shaping how these dollars are presented to council. It'll go through, a budget process, as Sam just alluded to, but ultimately the council will have to make a decision on what to fund, what not to fund, and how to fund those things. And so your recommendations here tonight will obviously influence that. And so I just wanted to kind of table set with that to say this is very much iterative. We're bringing this to you because we see the resources in front of us. We see the opportunity in front of us. And as many of you have seen before with the Collaborating for Climate and our grant program, there's such a real demand for it that in those two cases, expanding the capacity is kind of a no-brainer because the quality of the projects are so high. So let's do that. And we have the resources to do it. So let's activate that. Less reinventing the wheel and more taking advantage of what's actually out there. Next slide, please. I don't know who's driving. So before we get into questions, a couple of things I want to just share as we walk through this. What you're hearing tonight are some concepts. Some are technical in nature and some are new concepts for you all to consider. I'll just offer that in most cases, all of these have come with a lot of thought and work behind the scenes and publicly. So these are not just come up with ideas that PCEF can fund. We are actually trying to build on things that you've already heard in the past or from our external partners. And then second, as we get better and more sophisticated, aligning the PCEF process with our budget process, and as our budget process evolves, is going to be really important. So you all don't feel rushed, and we're consistently hitting the markers logically, so that the fund is in alignment with decision points. I think we're getting better. Much work to be done, but this is us improving from last year. So I'm going to stop there, and I think Eric goes next, right, Sam?
Oh, excuse me, there's a question from committee member Robin.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, Robin.
Hi. So my apologies. I need to leave in about 3 minutes, and I won't have the luxury of sitting in or the benefit of sitting in on the following presentations. But I just want to comment initially from what I read from the agenda materials, and just be honest and frank in that I'm a little bit disappointed in the process leading us to us here now. Not generally opposed to the proposals, but I feel like we're in a position of being asked for consider another proposal that is being kind of forced down our throat, and given very little time for deliberation because of budget timing and cycles and everything. And every time, this is not the first time this has happened. Every time this happens, we yield to whatever concerns that we have and say, next time we'll address it. And next time constantly happens. And, I'm just, this is frustrating. We need to kind of come up with a process to address this. And, right now the fund is intended to be community-led. And I would like to hear proposals from community as to, if we have an extra dollar in surplus, how are we going to spend it? Right now we're spending more money in the city budget. And, Donnie, I appreciate your comment that, this is a sizable amount of the city budget. And I appreciate this, but, it just feels like this is driven by city leaders and not community. And the last thing I'll just say is that I feel like there's a double standard here. It's been going on for a while, and in particular around the proposed blue-green deal. Again, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but if a nonprofit were to submit a proposal for $50 million, with a 6-page write-up and we're asked to deliberate right away, that is never going to happen, right? We would, it would be. We would not be doing our job in terms of reviewing the proposals and considering them. So I just want to call out that there's a double standard here. So again, I apologize. I need to leave. But I appreciate all the work into this, and I really appreciate if we can figure out how to avoid this from happening again in the future. Thank you.
Faith?
Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate everything you just shared. So I'm sorry that you will miss the rest of the conversation. Donnie, I have a clarifying question. It sounded as if I understood that we were going from the materials that were provided in advance, that we were going to be asked to make a recommendation tonight. But what you just shared made it sound like we had more time and that we didn't need to make a recommendation until sometime in the future with the new council. Is that what, can you clarify?
Yeah, sorry for the misspeak there on my part. You're definitely making a decision tonight, and some of it is retroactive to the grant program needing more capacity, right? The climate, Collaborating for Climate, having such great programs, there's opportunity there to fund more. So you're taking action to increase capacity for things that are already in motion. Anything that is beyond that is like the technical amendments we're talking about, regarding inflation or the blue-green plan, that would technically still go to council for adoption. So you're basically signaling this committee's opinion about those. Some of them is kind of backcasting, and some of it's forward-facing. But again, the committee's making a recommendation for a council action going forward.
Meg?
Yeah, just could you go back one slide Yeah, I just wanted a clarifying question. Well, one thing I will appreciate that I think a big struggle for the fund has been not having enough future projections, like with stability, and that's what has sometimes caused rush decisions. And so I am appreciating a 5-year look ahead because that's just what we've needed for the last 5 years. So we're getting closer to actually having like projections that help us feel like we actually have a sense of how much money we're going to have next year and after. So this is like critical to running a good program. So I'm appreciating having this. A question I have, at least in getting some preview, I wasn't sure. I mean, I know when we allocate money, like the money doesn't go all the door right away. And so I guess I just am trying to understand this understands or incorporates all the potential, like, yes, we've allocated money, but we haven't actually distributed it to the various community partners and bureaus. Like, can you help me understand all that?
Yeah, makes so great. So what's on the screen here is revenues, and what I spoke to was our spend down rate, right? So taking what's on the screen in front of you, which is the projections of our revenue being over or close to 200 million every year. Even with our currently committed, before any further action, the $1.3 billion this committee and council has said, yes, over the next 5 years, we're going to spend down. Even taking that into account, when the dust settles on that 5-year CIP, we still have, and this is conservative, a reserve ending fund balance of over 400 million. So after 1.3, and it's conservative, other people tell you it's much higher. I can just tell you anecdotally, at the end of this fiscal year, based on the Bureau's current projections to spend, with the other Bureau spending down too, we're still, we're conservatively $650 million in fund balance. So we're talking a real substantial amount of resources here. That, again, even if the Bureau accelerates, and bureaus, plural, accelerate their spending, which is not realistic, but if they do, even if the grant program gets the door, gets out, all the strategic programs are spent quickly, we're just not going to spend down the fund at a rate that's going to be problematic to additional, guidance by this committee. It's a lot of money.
It clarifies, yeah. Again, I go back to my point. This is the first time we've actually had, I think, a real long-term projection
and
or forecast. So I appreciate that we have one.
Depending on your perspective, the early indications are the $200 million projections going outward are going to remain the same. So where we went from 100 to 200 last year, which was a huge whiplash, right? That was part of the, the consternation from last year. We don't expect that level of recalibration. So we're all working from the same data points of we feel like 200 annually is a bankable number going forward. And that doesn't include interest, which is a whole other story. But good questions. And the last thing I just want to acknowledge, because Robin, flagged it about process. This isn't unique to PCEF. Everything in the city right now is in upheaval as we recalibrate around a new form of government, new structure, new delegation and authority. My colleagues here, especially the directors that are experiencing this in real time, can tell you that there's just so much change, and this has been happening. This isn't an excuse, but we're still learning and figuring out how to do things better. And I think when it comes to PCEF and how it's going to, fit into our overall city structure, because it is a part of the city. This isn't an external fund. It is inherently part of the city. How we do a better job of working with you all in collaboration with our processes is inherent. Like it has to happen because the fund is no longer this, like the children's levy is a better comparison to what we thought PCEF was going to be like. It's not like the children's levy. It's much bigger than that. It's more intensive financially. So it has to be looked at differently. And we're trying to do that.
Ranfis?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not going to, I guess, rehash the comments that my committee members have already made in terms of the process. I guess, Donnie, I think, where we are post the election and what we should anticipate next year brings me some pause, or I think it is worth taking all the pause. So all the things highlighted here around inflation, looking back and looking forward. Well, the question begets now, did we look comprehensively on all the anticipated allocated funding where we should anticipate funding in the advent of tariffs? So we have programs that we've committed around investment in EVs. EVs are likely going to be hit by tariffs. We have an adjusted here for inflation for things like cooling centers, all the things that are going to be hit by the potential of tariffs. And again, we don't have a crystal ball yet what those tariffs, if there will be tariffs, what the tariffs will be. But I think we could safely assume those would be impacted by tariffs. Additionally, every solar panel or solar project, if you talk to a contractor, they'll say the supply chain today means the solar panels we purchase tomorrow will have tariffs. So I think I feel like this is my question is how forward did we look at those things? Because it seems like if we have not done that yet, this is going to be another exercise in April. Additionally, the challenges we're going to face potentially next year will likely be a rollback of other federal incentives and funding. So I think we're going to see hard crunches, not just of the city, not just of the county, but at our schools and broadly throughout the state. So this kind of funding requires, I would say, strategic thinking, strategic planning. So again, I think it's, to me, I don't want to continue the drumbeat, but careful consideration, prudent decisions, I think do require time. I know we have a new city council, and I think, I guess my question here is both twofold. It's how forward did we look? Did we look into the potential impacts of tariffs, inflation from tariffs, and the removal of federal incentives like bill and IRA? And then two, what is the urgency to make these changes now versus February or post-February? What are we solving today that we could not solve for between the months of February and May?
Yeah, so Ramfis, so a couple of things I want to respond to is the tariff piece is, there's a lot of curiosity and concern. I mean, we're looking at it there's very real economic impacts to the state and then obviously to the city if both tariffs or federal funding rollbacks were to happen. And I don't think it's unrealistic for the city of Portland to be very concerned. Our president-elect has been very flippant about, his opinion about the city of Portland in the past on the campaign trail. We are a passive target for him. So yeah, we think about that a lot. Specifically to PCEF, we're balancing two things. And one is making good decisions, you're right. And also, and this is just a fact, this is an observation, our spend rate of PCEF has been far below the fund's revenue increase. Even looking at this fiscal year, which is going to be one of our bigger spend years, it's not only going to be less than the revenue we generated, still substantially, but it's compounding on underspend years in the past. So when the dust settles, big spend year for the Bureau, great, but we're still sitting on, $700 million. And so what I'm offering here isn't that we have aligned every single cent spent ideally for the next 5 years. That's not the point. The point is, how do we get these dollars out more quickly? Really? How do we get them into the hands of the people that can do good things with them? Because there is no shortage of great ideas out there. I think you all probably represent and think about and hear from constituents in a way that let you know directly without getting any feedback from staff that there are incredible ideas out there, organizations that are capable of doing good things. Our ability to get those dollars out the door has not been fast enough. And that's just an observation. And that's not a problem. It's just an opportunity because again, what you all have committed to date is still far below the projections. Because remember, the fund is not dependent on tariffs. In fact, in some cases, the tariffs are going to exacerbate the revenue. There's a potential, we've talked about this as well, that the fund could actually benefit from tariffs, which is super bizarre to think about, but there's a possibility too. The income, the revenue, right? So without getting down that rabbit hole, I can just tell you, Ramfis, that even the decisions today does not take influence from this body to make future decisions from unallocated resources. There's still plenty of dollars to be allocated. So to Robin's earlier point about the idea about that being community centered, yes, I would love to see us get more bigger projects out the door to those groups that are capable of spending larger amounts, because it's a toll on the staff, right? To have smaller grants. We've talked about that in the past. How do we leverage the fund size now that it is, because it's very substantial? How are you all leveraging that to have catalytic projects in our communities? You have to answer that. That was just more of a rhetorical.
No, yeah, and I'm not going to answer that, but I think, you know, what I'd say and on this, and I see Eric's hand up, is just, I don't think there's concern about the value of putting money out there quicker, right? If the intended benefit is to get benefits out there quicker, I think the question central here is always been the prudency to review that difference between the acceleration, making a decision today versus the acceleration of making that decision in between February and May. That is, I think, more the question. And I think in everything, spending out money quicker isn't always inherently good. Mistakes occur. My concern is always, if we make a mistake, if we did not do our due diligence, what are the ramifications back? And I think we as the committee, I think we get on the crosshairs for missteps of not doing our due diligence. So I think that's just the importance here of, as being good stewards, asking these tough questions, asking for things. So I guess that's just important. Again, you know, just to reiterate, you know, I think we can go back and forth. I'll let Eric chime in here, but, you know, I think one question we can get back to here is, you know, for say like the application, like the blue-green deal, does that decision need to happen today? Could that be deferred for another meeting? Could we put the same, you know, opportunity for us as a committee to, you know, ask follow-up questions to this application to do the due diligence we would want to review? And then the second piece would be just a clarifying question on the collaboration for increasing the solidarity climate action, solidarity and climate action grants. If we're discussing more money for the existing small group, or are we talking more money for another round of grants? I think that's an important question for me to clarify here.
Ramfis, who was your question directed to?
Those two are for Donnie.
Regarding whether now versus February, I'll share that we're trying to, February will be in a moment where council will be probably more influential in the process. And I guess this is an opportunity. This is one of those moments where it's, do we come to you now when we have more agency versus when we're reacting? And this is a chance for this committee to provide feedback. Because in February, like, I'll just, you know, you can read the papers, you can read the media. A lot of ideas how to spend PCEF dollars out there already from newly electeds. That's not I'm just sharing. There's ideas. The reason why we're here today is because this was a moment for us to bring you all, again, gestating ideas that city staff have been working on that. This is related to the natural resources component. Work that's been in that were directed by council for budget notes. And then again, some of the activities were really just look at the grant program. It needs more money. Let's give it more money. And then the Collaborating for Climate. Sam can correct me, but there was, you know, 50 projects approximately in $1 billion or maybe $2 billion in asks of really good projects. Like these weren't just, you know, back of the envelope concepts. These were things that I think many of us in this room collectively, you know, staff, committee members, audience members would say, yeah, those are great projects, but we can only fund a few of them. putting more resources in that, bucket felt logical, given that when we realized we had enough money to do that, right? So doing that now is logical because we're trying to make decisions about how to fund some of these things because many of them are relatively urgent. And it's for a variety of external reasons, federal funding, contracts, et cetera. To the point about timelines, this is always something that, and again, we have to work on this, Rampies, and I'm acknowledging that we're not there yet. We have a lot of work to do. Is we have to figure out a way to, given the influence of the fund now on the city's, structure, how do we align these processes so that we're better prepared for these conversations that happen? Yes, we probably should be having this conversation in August to prepare for the budget. Right? That's probably the type of thing. We should get these projects in alignment so that we're having the conversations beginning in August, but November better than February, I would say. So.
All right, and we're at 7 o'clock almost. Eric, I see your hand is up. If you could indulge us in taking a break at 7 and coming back at 7:10, and then Eric, starting off with you for comments, and then for you to proceed with your slides. Does that work?
And Tracy, I might suggest we take that 5 minute, if the option still exists, just give them time. I might suggest we take the 5 minute break and come back at 7:05 if folks are okay.
All right, so we'll come back at 7:05, everyone, and Eric will lead off. Thank you. Come back at 7:05. All right, Sam, before Eric begins, if you would like to just do a quick intro on Eric, and then we'll turn it over to him.
All right, I think Tracy, if I believe I was just putting my headphones back in, apologies. I want to turn it over to our Bureau of Planning and Sustainability Director, Eric Engstrom, to walk us through the next section, and we'll have a moment for clarifying questions after this as well. All right, Eric, take us away.
Thanks, Sam. And I'll just start by recapping what I think Donnie just said about the timeline. The rationale for us coming to you today and asking for a recommendation is because we have the opportunity to be ahead of the budget process rather than behind it, which is what happened last year. And we have this upcoming opportunity in December where we've already teed up process to amend the CIP, which is the blueprint that guides the 5-year investment. So that's our logic, to stay ahead of the budget process, which is, I know, being at the last meeting, something we heard you all express an interest in. And the opportunity cost for deferring that decision is, of course, that the city will continue its budget process in the coming months. And so our thinking is that you might want to weigh in at the conceptual stage earlier rather than wait for other ideas to have already reached council and be processed into the city's budget process. So, and a reminder that there are these 2 decision points with city council. The current city council will amend the CIP in December, and then the new city council will have to adopt a budget to implement that. So there is sort of this, that's partly the nuance I think you were catching with Donnie's language around how this will play out over the next 6 months, is because the budget decision doesn't get made until the spring. And so we'll be adopting the CIP amendments in December, and but the new council does weigh in and will bring their own ideas through that budget process. So again, an opportunity to stay ahead. So that being said, the slide you see here is a summary of the range of additional proposals that we are tracking for your consideration. The first one is to amend the community grants budget to increase the funding for that. You may recall we budgeted, or we allocated more than what was originally planned in the CIP in this last cycle of community grants because there were a large number of applications. So we know there's demand for that program, and if we do nothing else, the next year's allocation to the community grants program will be less than it was this year, just because we'll have to meter that budget out for the rest of the 4 years. So we think it makes sense to increase that budget. The Collaborating for Climate Action, there's a recommendation to increase that based on the significant demand that we saw for those requests. And Ramfis, I think our intent there, and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our intent there is that this would enable the selection committee to select a higher award or more grantees from the finalists that we already have. We weren't proposing to go back in the process, but there's among the 10 finalists, there's a much larger amount of money involved than we actually have available to allocate. So this would help us either increase individual awards or increase the number of grantees from that finalist list. The next grouping there that are the numbers 22, 32, 34 are bureau allocations that were made in the city budget process. And those 3 all have to do with increasing the inflation factors for those programs to account for the rate of inflation. That was not initially part of the awards, and it's something that's come up. F is increasing funds to strong performance on the Cooling Portland program. And then G is this blue-green deal, which you'll hear more about through the rest of the presentation. There are also some amendments to the climate investment plan that are more technical in nature, that don't involve additional funding, that are just changes to language and orientation, corrections to allocations involving the schools program, adjusting the end date of the CIP changing the focus of the tree canopy reserve to be for private property trees, because subsequent to adopting that program, the larger public tree program was allocated, and so that kind of replaces the need for that. And then just adjusting the naming of the tree canopy maintenance reserve program. So those are the more technical changes. So I'll pause there and ask if there are questions on that. And I'll also give Sam an opportunity to correct me if I got anything wrong there.
Faith?
Thank you very much. I'm wondering where these dollar amount allocations came from. I mean, some of them are real obvious when we're talking about the, modifications based on inflation, for example. Obviously, I'm assuming that Portland Blue Green Deal had, we saw the budget for that in the materials that were provided, and there was some rationale for that. How about the percentage? Is it a percentage change? Who came up with the dollar amounts in A and B?
They are very rounded numbers, high-level concept numbers, and it's largely based on what the capacity is. Donnie alluded to the possibility of up to 400 million in extra, not new revenue, but additional spendable money because of changes in interest and the period of accounting and all the things that were mentioned earlier. So those numbers are moldable, I guess, is what I would say, but they're staff's recommendation based on what we understand about the demand and about what is available potentially in this particular cycle.
Sorry, I'm sorry for being so particular on this. BPS staff?
Yes, and
Okay.
and in consultation with the budget office about what resources we think are available.
Okay, thank you.
Meg?
Yeah, I think my question's a little bit of a follow-up to Faith's, and I wasn't sure if I'm asking a clarifying question. I might be asking more of like a content question. I'm just not quite sure where the flow is headed, so I'm going to ask it now. But kind of like Faith was saying, when I look at this, I'm excited to see some of these things, particularly it's something that the committee has talked about for years. Like, if there's more resources, let's put it into the community responsive grants. I don't remember the exact data, but Sam could probably fill it in with our recent RFP round. We had a lot more demand than we were able to give away in resources. So I think my question, and I know on B, since I was on the first round of reviewers, we also got something like 50 applications for hundreds of millions of dollars, and we only are going to be awarding a small amount of that. So to me, I see you just commented, Eric, on demand. And I guess I'd like to hear more about because in my experience, A and B had huge demand that we didn't fill. And yet I see mainly a $50 million bureau allocation being the large percentage of the fund here. And I can go into that, but I'm just curious, I feel like there's more demand that I'm seeing responded to in A and B. I'm excited to see more to A and B, but I'm wondering why it's not even more.
Sam, do you want to elaborate on any of this? In general, yeah. I think what I'm saying is, there's demand. This is a budgeting of what we think is available.
Yeah, what I'll share is there is absolutely substantial community demand, and as you know, there's a certain amount of staff capacity per community demand, just because they're smaller grants, and so there is a balance between the larger projects in the Collaborating for Climate Action, our ability to move resources versus the community responsive grants. Our objective there was certainly to make sure that we had more funding in there so we can keep the funding steady. This year, we know there's some pent-up demand because we did not fund one year. We also expect to make adjustments so that we're right-sizing and making adjustments such that I expect some of our future cycles to result in less demand. We're going to be making adjustments to how long grantees can go out for funding for capital projects, things like that, so that we're going to be getting projects closer to when they're ready. So a range of adjustments, but I just want to name that we're going to continue to learn on our community grants what's the right number as we iteratively adjust and fix and tighten and make updates to our programming. So I wouldn't expect that this is the exact right number. I think it's a number. It gets us so that we've got more funding in the next cycles. And I suspect that in year 3 or 4, we may come back and say we still need more. So I just want to, at least on that part of it, acknowledge that it's not a perfect exact science. It's a bit of an art to find that.
Yeah, and I would just reiterate that these are estimates, that we are very interested in committee feedback on the right balance between these different ideas.
And Sam, can you comment on B? So the increase, I think that's pretty close to the amount we said, about 150 was what the original allocation was, 157, something like that, right? And so this would be, is this increasing it to nearly 300? And what does that mean in terms of that decision in December? Like,
yeah, I guess I'll speak to what I know, and I'll look to Donnie and Eric to help fill me in. There's others bits to share there. There's in the short list of 10 proposals, there's about I think 600 million worth of projects. And so under the original earlier scenario, we certainly would have been looking at constraining if we were aiming to fund a few projects, both down scoping the projects a good bit and funding a handful of projects. And this brings us more in line where there's a scenario, again, until we get there, I don't know that we can entirely square that away, but a scenario where you're funding closer to 5 to 6 of those projects. And just overall long term, we generally, it's imperfect. We want to be funding close to 50% of our asks, but that's the imperfect of how do we get closer to we're not rejecting 70-80% of folks.
And Sam, I might also make that the other consideration was we didn't want to occur what almost happened last year, where people are trying to budget every cent of the available fund. So there needs to be a little bit more discipline, which was, when I asked the team to start looking at a reserve policy for the fund, at some point we have to actually put a cap so that we are confident to, Ramfi's earlier point about tariffs, that, there's things can sway, that we have enough resources to deliver on all of our promises. So there's also a discipline in this of not being too, but yeah, to answer the question, 120 felt round because it's relative to what we think the demand is going forward. 142 plus 158 is 300, also aligned with, what we think the demand is in the 10. So yeah, one thing I just want to flag too is the 49 million is over 5 years. So it's approximately 10 annually going forward. So, it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's a big deal, but, it's relative.
All right, Sam, I'm going to have you please introduce the presenters and we'll move on, and we will take questions after the presentations once they begin. So afterwards, we'll have questions.
Sam, you're muted.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Eric, Donnie. Next up here is the Blue-Green Deal proposal. So you'll hear from Director Uchiyama from Bureau of Environmental Services, followed by Director Long from Portland Parks and Recreation, followed by Project Manager Shanna Anderson, and then Laura Lehman, and then last year Chief Sustainability Officer Vivian Satterfield. So I'll turn it over to the team to share on this, unless Eric or Donnie, you have anything to share beforehand, but otherwise the floor is yours. And I believe Director Uchiyama, you're going up first.
Yes, thank you, Sam. And good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you all tonight. Director Long and I are here to introduce to you a proposal that connects community directly to 5 bureaus that span 3 service areas and a whole myriad of subject matter experts across the city. We have experts from Portland's Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, from Water, Transportation, Parks and Recreation, and Environmental Services. We also want to acknowledge the support of Director Campbell from the Water Bureau and Director Williams of the Transportation Bureau, and Director Engstrom as well. And they've all contributed and endorsed this package that we're asking you to consider. So in recognition of this historic opportunity for improved coordination among the bureaus in this new form of government, the 5 bureaus have been collaborating extensively for the last 18 months to develop a roadmap for how we can better deliver climate resiliency strategies and natural resources services to all Portlanders. services that we like to refer to as blue-green infrastructure, or I like to think of it as an interconnected system of waterways and green spaces. This collaboration was built on a history of BES and Portland Parks and Recreation working together with our community to improve how we coordinate and care for the city's natural areas. This coordination began under the direction and vision of Lake Commissioner Nick Fish and has led to improved care for natural areas and green spaces managed by both of our bureaus. The 5 bureaus tonight want to acknowledge the critical role that PCEF funds are currently playing to support us towards climate adaptation, community health, and ecological restoration. Since those important investments were made, we've been working together to form a bigger, bolder vision for how we can provide climate adaptation and solutions together as one city, not just Parks and BES. So the Blue-Green Deal is a clear, bold step to build the city's capacity to assess the resiliency of public land and water resources, restore degraded landscapes, and expand partnerships with the community to conduct land stewardship activities. The funding will allow the bureaus with land management responsibilities, BES, Water, Transportation, and Portland Parks, to conduct critical and unresourced land stewardship work. The projects that we're proposing provide safe and clean natural areas where community members can experience nature, provide stewardship opportunities that allow residents and community members to participate in caring for the land and water in their very own neighborhoods. So I'd like to invite Director Long now to provide additional context for our proposal.
Thank you, Dawn. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. My name is Adina Long. I'm the Director of Portland Parks and Recreation. Thank you to the committee for having us this evening. As Dawn said, we've been working together for about 18 months to chart a course to improve how we deliver natural resource services as a city. Through a series of workshops and work sessions with our city administrator, deputy city administrators, our director colleagues, bureau subject matter experts, and advisory bodies, including the Portland Utility Board, Portland Parks and Recreation Board, and the Urban Forestry Commission. We've created a vision and work plan that shows us what we need to do in order to strengthen our natural resource services and systems, provide equitable and world-class community services, build the city's resilience to climate change, and harness our environmental protection and restoration tools to support Portland's safety, livability, and economic recovery. We now have a plan which was delivered to the city administrator in April of this year. We're happy to share the work plan document with anyone who's interested in learning more about the path our team sees from where we are today. The next step we need to take is to move that plan forward in a purposeful and meaningful way. The work in this proposal would allow us to do that and would also support other critical work that will make sure we protect the natural areas and green spaces that Portlanders value. I'd like to close by highlighting that our collaboration reflects what we've heard from the community about the importance of environmental protection and stewardship. In the 2019 Portland Insight Survey, respondents' favorite part of where they live in Portland was access to outdoor and natural areas. Almost all respondents, 97%, visited our city parks and natural areas. In the 2017 Community Needs Survey, we heard that 94% of respondents reported visiting a park or natural area at least once in the previous 12 months, and that 50% of respondents visited at least weekly. We have a responsibility to care for these spaces that are so important to our community and such an integral part of our city. With that, I will turn it over to our project managers who will provide an overall review of the proposal. Jana?
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? Thanks. So good evening. I'm Shana Anderson. I'm joined by Laura Lehman as the project managers supporting this multi-bureau and multi-service area natural resources effort described by Directors Long and Uchiyama. We're very grateful for the opportunity to bring you this proposal for a package of programs focused on citywide land conservation, stewardship, workforce development, and climate change resilience. Next slide, please. As you know, Portland is a global leader known for our park and green infrastructure systems. It's a part of our identity, but we have data collected from multiple bureaus and partners showing there are opportunities for improvement. The city's tree canopy monitoring report showed a decrease in Portland's canopy, and the city's watershed health index has not shown improvements in more than a decade of tracking. Director Long spoke of recent polling that very much demonstrates the importance of the environment to our community. The Portland Values and Beliefs Survey found that 78% of Portlanders believe that environmental protection is either essential or very important for the city to provide. About 71% of Portlanders believe that climate or disaster preparation is essential or very important for the service to provide. But we've also received information about lower ratings for service delivery, with 39% reporting that the city is providing services in a manner that is excellent and 26% is good. So we know we have room for improvement. Next slide, please. So what we brought to you today is a proposal unique to Portland's landscape and something that 4 of the 5 partner bureaus do every day, but we believe we could do better with a holistic and collaborative vision with the community and involving the community in implementation. And that's growing our ability to steward Portland's 8,000 acres of natural areas, over 150 developed parks, 2,500 green stormwater facilities, miles of rights of way, and a network of 370 linear miles of rivers, streams, and sloughs. This would be a new model for managing public land that is more inclusive of the community, with an emphasis on protecting areas most vulnerable to impacts and in underserved communities. Next slide, please. One component of the package focuses, back one slide. The first component focuses on the care of our land and water resources. This would include assessing our landscape to plan and prioritize work with a climate lens that considers new threats like extreme weather events, an increase in nuisance pests, and urban heat island effects. We would conduct restoration on natural areas impacted by the effects of climate change and illegal dumping, addressing damaged trees, trampled vegetation, degraded water quality, and trash. The target areas would be focused by the land assessment to ensure that work efforts focus on areas most vulnerable to impacts and in underserved communities, and that further impacts from illegal dumping are immediately addressed. We would be managing vegetation to reduce wildfire risk. We would restore degraded sections of Johnson Creek, reduce flooding on private property, diversify vegetation along stream banks, increase shade, and increase open space in underserved neighborhoods. This would be a service delivery model that promotes workforce equity by ensuring that workers performing the physical labor of maintaining green and natural assets are fairly compensated for their labor with livable wages, health insurance, and other benefits. Our list of existing partners is long and includes Wisdom of the Elders, Johnson Creek Watershed Council, the Columbia Slough Watershed Council, PSU's Indigenous Nations Studies Program, Southeast Uplift, Relay Resources, Verde, and numerous schools within the 5 districts of Portland. New funding would enable us to increase our workforce development contracts and expand opportunities for on-the-ground stewardship. This would in turn increase community access to natural spaces, enhance public health and safety, and promote community participation in sustainable practices. Ultimately, we believe this will deliver a higher level of service with better outcomes for green and blue assets, for the community, and for the people doing the work. I will now pass the presentation to my colleague Laura to provide an overview of other components of this proposal. Thank you very much for your time and for your service to Portland.
Thank you, Shayna. Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Lehman, and I'll take us through the last few slides. Next slide, please. So this component that's on your screen of the proposal includes resources to conduct a vulnerability assessment for land and water managed by the city and to create a resiliency plan. This assessment would look at potential risks to land and water quality, watershed health, and infrastructure from climate change and from other hazards. This section builds on existing work needed to update the city's climate change risk assessment, which was last updated in 2014. This would be a technical assessment upon which the Sustainability Office could begin to build the city's next climate action plan. The assessment would include a prioritized list of improvements and actions the city would need to undertake to reduce the risk of infrastructure damage and failure from climate change and seismic hazards, and it would increase the city's ability to recover from a natural disaster. Strategies can include infrastructure projects to help make the built environment more resilient, natural systems protections that minimize harm to people in the built environment from climate and other hazards, education and awareness programs that inform the public about natural hazards and ways to mitigate impacts, as well as updates to plans, codes, and regulations. Next slide, please. The proposal this before you right now also includes a pilot of a new program, the Green Corps. The vision of the Green Corps is to create a green industry employment program with on-the-job training for individuals with barriers to employment. The outcome of a program like this would be healthier, safer, and more engaged communities and individuals who are prepared for employment through practical field experience and technical training in a variety of environmentally related jobs. The City of Portland has successful existing programs, including the Youth Conservation Crew, which is managed by Portland Parks and Recreation, that should be maintained and that could serve as models or as a foundation to create this new Green Corps program. Research, coordination, and consultation with existing programs is going to be required to launch a pilot of this concept. So the proposal includes that development work, with the pilot of the program occurring in years 4 and 5 of the requested funding. Next slide, please. Just going to quickly go over some of the outcomes and co-benefits that would result from this proposal. So on this slide, we have an overview showing that this proposal would provide positive outcomes in 4 main areas: carbon sequestration, climate resilience, improved ecosystem health and water quality, and community benefits and community engagement. So around carbon sequestration, this proposal includes planting trees and shrubs, caring for our existing natural areas and green spaces that already serve as carbon sinks. Excuse me, I'm fighting a little cold, and reducing the risk of wildfires that could release stored carbon that takes many years to recapture once it's lost. Climate resilience benefits would include improving our green spaces' ability to cope with the pressures of climate change. We're already seeing those impacts. Mitigation of the impacts of heat events in our city by caring for cooling spaces that lower temperatures and provide a place where people can cool off during a heat event, and reduce flooding through floodplain restoration. This proposal would improve ecosystem health and water quality by enhancing habitat and restoring natural areas. It would remove invasive plant species that impact the ecological health of natural areas and that also can serve as fuel for wildfires. Healthy natural areas and restored floodplains also reduce stormwater runoff and improve water quality by slowing flows and by filtering water. Lastly, on this slide, this proposal would provide a range of benefits to community. So people who live in Portland are already benefiting directly from our natural spaces and green spaces, and would benefit directly from all the things I've already mentioned on this slide. All of these environmental benefits improve the livability of our city, both now and into the future. Some of these things also have direct health benefits for populations that are vulnerable to heat and wildfire smoke events. Beyond those improved environmental outcomes, community members would gain the mental and physical benefits of having sustainable access to nature and being able to spend time in green spaces. This proposal also includes opportunities for people to become involved in caring for Portland's natural areas and green infrastructure, become more invested, and to learn more about these spaces and other environmental issues. Let's go to the next slide and take a quick look at the budget, please. So we've compressed this budget a bit so it fits on the slide. So you do, I think I heard someone mention that you received some materials ahead of time with a little more detailed version. But just to go over this one quickly, it includes conducting a public land assessment in years 1 and 2 to inform stewardship and management. It includes a suite of restoration activities that Shana described for us, focused on reducing wildfire risk, restoration, ecological restoration on public land and around public infrastructure, expanding workforce development opportunities, and constructing floodplain restoration and revegetation projects. It includes a pilot of a Green Corps program, including wages, benefits, training, and coordination. It includes seed funding for a climate office oversight and coordination across the service areas. and for a watershed resilience division to house select programs that are currently in BES to grow the city's ability to deliver green stormwater infrastructure, the municipal flood management and flood insurance program, and restoration project services. And finally, it includes funding for a citywide land and water vulnerability assessment to guide resilience, mitigation, and adaptation efforts. And that would also include an analysis of disparate community impacts. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Now I'm going to turn it over to Chief Sustainability Officer Vivian Satterfield to close our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you to all staff, directors, and especially to the PCEF committee members who are here. Good evening. I'm Vivian Satterfield, and I'm your Chief Sustainability Officer. I just want to take a pause to just acknowledge this is actually the first time I'm speaking in front of the PCEF committee. It's been a really long road that I've had actually with PCEF since the very beginning on the strategic formulation, being a part of the campaign, and I was part of community-based organizations. Also on the grantee side, having been a grant recipient of PCEF dollars, thank you, in the past. And now I'm here as city staff. I've been in my role, I kind of call myself a baby bureaucrat. I joined the city in February of 2023. And so this is a bit of a surreal moment and a bit of a full circle moment for me. So I just want to take a moment to kind of acknowledge that. What you see here today with the blue-green proposal, I hope you can see that there's a lot of work and development that has gone into it and that the ultimate benefits that it serves is Portlanders. You know, I used to always think in the advocacy that I would do, and I'd look at all the city staff and I'd be like, those are the good jobs, and try to articulate what the continuum, what the pipeline could be. And I now see PCEF making those investments and creating those good jobs and ensuring that can happen to the benefit of all of us. I'm excited about this opportunity. My role is now going to be positioned in the city administrator's office. I'll be reporting them to directly. And the positioning of my role really elevates climate and sustainability and invests in this coordination directly, especially on natural resources. It shows that it's a priority, while recognizing that this kind of stewardship has to be ongoing and consistent. Climate work never stops. It has to be continually invested in. 5 bureaus work together to plan it, and this is exactly the kind of catalyzing moment that the Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund was designed to be a part of. And so I've been proud to be working on this project, and I see this as a form of intergenerational equity. It's at the intersection of climate justice and economic justice, and it's perfectly designed for PCEF. And I guess I'll just kind of keep my comments short here because I really do want to hear the questions and comments coming from the committee that all of us right now are uniquely positioned to be able to answer this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivian. Just committee members, are there any questions or comments? D'Angelo.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging me. First, I want to just thank the bureau directors, the staff, and everyone on the call that came to present this to the committee. I want to offer a different perspective regarding the speed in which this has come to the committee. Not that I disagree with that there needs to be a process. I do think there needs to be a process. I firmly believe that. And I'm not insensitive to the issues that the city has with trying to get things rolled over. I want to start and say that I appreciate the proactiveness in which the city has in caring for community and bringing a proposal like this to us for us to review, for us to comment on. It shows that the city is taking climate action very seriously, specifically as it pertains to how it impacts underprivileged and underserved communities. I do want to appreciate that, just off top. However, I won't say however. What I'll say is, in this proposal, I do believe that there are plenty of very good ideas. I think that I really like the Green Course pilot. I really like the restoration of Johnson Creek. You know, as a middle schooler, that was one place that I would go and I would volunteer and clean up. And I understand that that's a location that's needed love for a very long time. I guess for me, on the other side of it, there are a lot of initiatives in this plan that I have also seen community members, CBOs and organizations that have applied for funding to PCEF. Some have successfully been granted funding. Some others are or, they've been rejected and they're still going through these processes. But I don't quite see a ton of separation between what the city is proposing and the things that community members are already in the process of doing. So for me, I guess I would like to see a little more separation between the two, and how what the city is proposing is a little different, or is drastically different enough from what the community is proposing to say that this is something that we need to move forward with, and we need to move forward with before the new city council. I can't quite say that I'm totally comfortable making a decision on this proposal, again, because I don't see much of a separation between what the city is proposing and what community members are doing. I'm kind of looking at two screens because I have the proposal in front of me as well. And I think that there was one piece that stood out to me the most, is the equity piece in regards to the preliminary discussions with community colleges and nonprofit workforce development partners for this co-creation, this training program. As somebody that works in workforce equity and economic development, workforce development, I do understand the necessity for programs of that nature to be very specific to the communities that they're serving. And so when I saw that, I was excited for it. But I would have liked to see that be a little more fleshed out. And I think that if this proposal has some time to cook, proverbially, I think that that is something that could be fleshed out, and the committee could have a confident response to whether or not this is something, at least for me, that I would have a confident response being able to move forward with this. But those are my comments.
Tracy?
Thank you to all the representatives that did the presentations today. These were fantastic. I certainly appreciated this Portland Blue-Green Deal budget proposal. And I had a question about the Green Core pilot program and how many Portlanders would be potentially benefiting from this workforce initiative. I may have missed it in the presentation, but I just would love to be able to hear that number.
I can go and share. Thank you for the question. The resources that are currently built into the budget is actually to scope and design a project. So we do not have the detail that you're asking for, which is how many folks, but we do have really good examples, as was referenced from the Youth Conservation Corps at Portland Parks and other programs. And we also would be consulting with other community-based organizations who currently have similarly designed programs to start scoping that work.
Thank you.
Faith?
So I want to echo what my fellow committee members have said, and just deep gratitude for you bringing this to us and for the work that's gone into this idea. I'm really excited that the city is thinking about ways to eliminate obstacles in process and in organization and in structure to really get at holistically at this issue. I like the idea. I don't know much about the idea, and I have to tell you that I was trying so hard to really pay attention to this presentation because it's clouded in frustration, as I'm sure you either were prepped for or could pick up on during the presentation. I'm sorry that you got, the 30 minutes or the 20 minutes to present to us at the end of a meeting. When we're going to be asked to make a decision on it, it kind of puts us in an impossible situation. So I have a lot more to say about that if we get to that, but I did have two specific questions that came up in the slide deck. Well, actually, they didn't come up in the slide deck. One is related to the budget, and I'm wondering how this new office gets funded after 5 years of potential PCEF sponsorship. So I didn't see that built in, or where you're looking for funds to carry this forward after the 5 years. So that's one question. And then the other is since I learned that it's been on the books since April, I'm wondering if this was a proposal that was proposed with the rest of the city kind of budget filling proposals that we passed this past summer. And I don't recall seeing this. So I wondered why this wasn't part of that package.
I can respond to your first question in regard to the Watershed Resilience Office, if that's what you were asking of part of the funding in that 5-year proposal is to develop a long-term funding strategies with alternative funding to PCEF and the existing resources that we do have in order to come up with a sustainable long-term way to fund these important services.
Great, thank you.
And this is Adina Long, if I could just chime in, and also sort of a partial answer to your question, Faith. I'm not sure, well, I hope you're aware that the Portland Parks and Recreation is heading into its 5th and final year of a local option levy. And it is our hope that the incoming council will refer a measure to the ballot so that we can renew that levy. And so that's the type of funding that would allow us to continue the type of work that's been outlined in this proposal. And if I may also to, was it D'Angelo's question about how does this differ from what community does? I think the most important piece is to think about the scale of the work. We, Portland Parks and Recreation, have 8,000 acres of natural areas. We can really scale up this type of work in a way that community can't. But I don't want to, but I also want to, underscore how important working with community is. We work with so many nonprofits, CBOs, and other organizations to see this work to fruition. And I think it's important for them to be a part of that work. But I don't think that the scale of the work and the scope of the work that we're talking about could be done by community alone. Thank you.
Ramphis?
Hey, thanks for the presentation. Appreciate you all taking the time to come here and present. I just want to note here, we've just kind of had a discussion around a round of grants for the collaboration for climate action and the importance of having community partners present. And so I've noticed here, both on the, application, the organizations that you have partnerships with, and then on the budget, and then what I've heard, verbally, groups are partner. I'll just say there's, I'm just really curious the depth and strength of those partnerships. But I think something that D'Angelo said earlier, makes me want to say, like, around the relationship with groups, concerns I've heard from community groups with some of the grant making programs within BES in particular around the Superfund, which I've never been a party to as a grantee, has been an acrimonious relationship between, community groups and some of the city's institutions within granting. So, I guess my, it'd be good to be illuminated around the strength of those partnerships. And then to, like, would there be a willingness, to come back at our subsequent meeting with those community partners to talk about the strength of these partnerships and maybe take a vote of determination. That would help me in making a funding decision. Additionally, would, allow Robin, who I think is a really important voice in this committee, who just could not be here, to also have an opportunity to ask follow-up questions. I think it's just really important to have his voice in this process as well.
So Ramphis had several questions. Is there someone who would like to respond? Or Ramphis, were you expecting a response, or were you just putting your questions out there?
Putting them out there, I'll allow Megan or Meg to ask her questions, but I would love, some of those questions to be answered if possible tonight.
All right, Meg.
Well, yeah, maybe people can answer them together. So share appreciation from the committee, like, for the presentation and for the great thinking. And, a lot of this stuff I'm a fan of. I see it aligning with PCEF values. There's a ... and but coming. I think, though, that I share some of the concerns that Robin did earlier, in that we review community grant applications over a multi-month period, and we expect them to fill out a really detailed application with metrics about greenhouse gas reduction, benefits to PCEF priority population, workforce metrics, and the level of application we expect for a $500,000 project from a community org is higher than just what we're getting 2 days before a meeting. So and I have questions like, what are the greenhouse gas emissions reductions? That's usually a calculation we do for every project. You mentioned zip codes with PCEF priority communities, so that's the start. But I just want to dig in. The $50 million is a lot of money. It's much more than we give our community partners after a much longer review process. So I'm just struggling with the ask to us to review. I hold this fund. It's my job to hold it with integrity and to make thoughtful, deliberate decisions, and it just doesn't feel possible in this situation. And I bet you can bring us back information, and I hope you will. So that's one. And I do have curiosity, like Randby said, about the depth of community partnerships, because that's a main role we play as the committee, is championing community and their role in all of it. So I hope you can come back to us with more information. We're part of this is it's not a one-off experience that we've had as a committee of kind of being put in this position of asked to. So that's one thing I'm feeling. And a kind of a side conversation that I don't need an answer on tonight, but I love the idea of a multi-bureau collaboration. Love it. And I have worked for really complicated bureaucracies and know how complicated that is. And I recognize that PCEF is situated in BPS and not at the top of BPS, but within the department. So I'm just curious what oversight would look like. How would this collaboration go? What role will we play? So those are kind of two big concerns I would have about that. I wouldn't be able to vote yes on a $50 million thing in a 20-minute presentation. It's just not, my integrity would be on the line on that. And so that's just not where I am personally, although I do appreciate and love a lot of the aspects that were presented, but that's just kind of my reaction.
Donnie?
Yeah, actually, thank you. I was going to first respond to Faith's question about the timing of how this proposal didn't make it into the last batch of bureau. It's true that the team, and frankly, I was a part of the team initially, and I was a BPS director, submitted the final report to City Administrator Jordan in April. That was actually a little bit timeline-wise after we were in the process of the city bureau projects, which had started in the fall. But also, even after that submission, the directors and Mike Jordan, we were kind of, working on what the priorities were. There was a lot in there. It was a real kitchen sink sort of plan, all good stuff. And this is really sort of the stuff that came out of that was PCEF, aligned, and frankly, where we were ready to go. It was leveraging experience and the must-haves of sort of the work, if you will. So that was sort of the timing thing. It's just, and this is our challenge, right? As a city, generally not unique to PCEF, on how we align our systems and our asks. And then second, and Meg, just to follow up on the question about more information. Yes, this is never ideal. At some point we have to figure out how the PCEF committee is going to be able to provide granular analysis of trying to spin down $1 billion. What is the appropriate level of analysis that this group can do as a volunteer body? And it's a sincere question about your bandwidth as a group. And so it's just something I don't know how to answer that, but you're right, 20 minutes is not sufficient to analyze any project, right? And I can tell you that it's not this group, and I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues in the city, to come to you with something they've worked on for years and distill it down into 20 minutes. That's also unfair to them, because I tell you that these are subject matter experts. They give a damn. They want to tell you the great things that they've been working on already, that they want to do with these resources, why it's a pilot and not a full-blown project. There's intentionality behind the work. I think you heard it. I think there's legitimacy to it as well. To Adina's point, the city as a steward of substantial acreage that is an opportunity and a burden, requires a lot of capital planning and thought. It's not just seat of the pants. So you're right, Meg. This is completely insane. And what's our options, right? We can analyze things as we go. You can either have faith and trust into the staff that are working on this, or you don't. And to your question about come back to you with more information, absolutely. I have no doubt that the team here is, I've seen the documents, are able to provide way more context. And the last thing about the grant program, because it came up about BES, but as a whole, behind the scenes, hopefully really soon to be daylit, there's incredible work happening to streamline the city of Portland's grant making processes so that it's consistent, it's accessible, people understand what they're entering into. Because I can tell you that in the prior form of government, each bureau was kind of creating their own grant programs, and for better or for worse, no judgment. It led to some inequities, some consternation, and we're trying to smooth that out by having a more consistent model across the board. I'm just sharing this with you to say that you're naming things that are absolutely challenges, but they're also presenting opportunities for us to get better. In this particular moment, yeah, we came to you with a pretty robust project, 50 million over 10 years or 5 years, excuse me, approximately. Yeah, that's a pretty healthy thing to analyze, no doubt.
All right, Eric, before I go to you, we are almost at time, so I just would like to ask committee members if you are comfortable moving beyond 8 for this evening's meeting. If anyone is opposed, I guess share that. Otherwise, we'll continue with the meeting being longer than 8. All right, I don't hear any opposition. Eric, turning it over to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge the analogy that was made about comparing this to the depth of information that you would get for a private grantee. I do want to remind folks and calibrate the decision we're asking for tonight. We're not asking you to make a funding award with this decision. The opportunity before us is the CIP amendment, and whether we should be putting into the CIP space for a program like this. The actual funding decision about exactly how many dollars and exactly where it goes, that's something that would play out in the coming years through the budget process. But the opportunity in December is the council's amendment of the CIP. And so similar to the request to add money to the community grants program, you're not making that individual grant award with that money either tonight. But the opportunity here is, or the question here is really whether we should make space for this kind of program in the CIP, and recognizing that we don't have all the information yet.
Faith?
Thank you. I'm not sure I understand that last comment, but I wanted to react to what Donnie was sharing previously, because I 100% agree with what you shared, and that this is a lot of money for this group to analyze and to be accountable to. But you made the dichotomy, or you suggested that there was we either believed staff, we trusted in staff, or we didn't. And I just wanted to share that that's a little bit of hyperbole and also not where we are. As a committee, our job is to recommend the CIP to council and any amendments to council. That's our job. And we have guiding principles to do that, right? And our guiding principles are that any action that comes before us is focused on climate action that has multiple benefits, and that is justice-driven, community-powered, and accountable. And it's the accountability piece that I just can't get over in this one, because we are accountable to community, and that's why we were in the original legislation, to do that and to represent community. And so I just think that we're in this kind of impossible, just like you're saying that city staff is in an impossible position. This ask to us is putting the committee in kind of an unsolvable, impossible solution. I think that Micah started off our meeting by saying that it was stuck in a duality. And I just have to express, I feel the same. Like, there's some good ideas here. I think the more money we can get out into community, the better off we will be. What a blessing we find ourselves in with extra money to put into climate action for the benefit of Portlanders. Fantastic. But we have a particular job to do, and Megan really kind of gave voice to that as well. And I just think that you're asking us to be in an impossible position. I think we were there, 6 months ago or whenever it was that we did the last round of city programs. And I really took it, my stance at that time was, in order to provide value to the community and to still have value as a committee, we needed to say yes to those. And I feel like now we could say, if we say yes, it's a rubber stamp. And if we say no, we're not, we'll just be bulldozed. So I think that there is absolutely no decision that the committee can make that is in integrity with our job. So I'm really disappointed that we're here being asked for this. And that sounds a little bit like whining. I don't mean it to sound that way. I completely understand the merits of the arguments. There's so many merits in all of the programs, in the budget discussion. Absolutely agree. And even in the timing, that I think it's very strategic to act when you have more agency as city bureaus. Totally makes sense to me. And yet our job is kind of an impossible position.
Don?
Thanks. I'm sorry, I missed the timing of commenting on Ron Fee's question around our partners. So I'm going to switch channels just a little bit to say that we'd be absolutely happy to come back with more detail on our partners. We have a wide range of partners. I don't have firsthand experience with the Portland Harbor grant awards, but I do know that there was some community concern. I'm happy to bring that forward and unpack that and talk about it. And we also know we have some really successful and have, deep roots and with other community partners. So there's a range, and I'm a big proponent of lessons learned and where we've made mistakes, bringing that forward and learning from them. So really happy to come back with any detail the committee needs to understand our partnership. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Don. Okay, so Donnie, I'll go to you, and after that, we'll move on to the next slide and review the decision-making process. So Donnie?
Thanks, Tracy. And Faith, I'm sorry, I want to just respond quickly because I want to clarify. I wasn't suggesting that you had to trust the natural resources staff. I was saying give every time staff presents to you throughout the whole process as a committee that they're coming to you with these huge grant processes, these big asks, you're trusting that you're getting the complete information, all the information that's so complex, it's really distilled down, and you have to trust that you're getting the best of this really complex range of ideas, concepts, proposals. It's when I think about PCEF now at its current scale, and every time you make a decision, think about the scale. I think about the scale of the grant program, the Clubbing for Climate. Even tonight, these amendments are huge. And we're bringing it to you in 20-minute increments of process. Even when we have more time, it's still only 2 hours for hundreds of millions of dollars. And so there's a lot of trust that you all are putting into the city staff that are coming to you, regardless of when. And that's what I was alluding to. It feels like it's daunting. And it's getting more daunting the bigger the fund is. That's what I was referring to. Not just tonight, although tonight is sort of emblematic of the whole issue. So apologies for that quick speak, but I just wanted to clarify it was more of a broader trust that I was referring.
Thank you, Donnie. If we could move to the next slide and review the decision-making process. So here is our modified decision-making process. I won't read all of the slide, but the primary areas are proposal, temperature check, discussion, amendments, decision. What is important is when 6 or 7 committee members are present, there needs to be 5 affirmative decisions. When 8 or 9 committee members are present, there needs to be 6 affirmative decisions. And I see there are hands up. So let me, Alicia, you have a question or comment?
I did just want to ask for really clarification on what our decision is, because I think the explanation that Eric just provided, that we're not actually being asked to approve funding, but to approve the potential for funding in the new CIP, it doesn't seem like that's clear based on some of the other feedback from Faith and others. So it would be really helpful before we get into the actual consensus decision-making process to make sure everyone is aligned with what the decision is.
Sam, could you elaborate maybe on the distinction between what the CIP does and how, once we have a program in the CIP, what are the different paths to having that thing actually get ratified for final funding?
The CIP is the overarching document that guides the program in terms of how it makes its investments, sets the stage for that. If it's not within the CIP, it can't move into the budget. I mean, we did a one-time thing, but if it's not in the CIP, it cannot move within the budget. But then the subsequent, if it's in the CIP, then there are contracting processes, grant processes, IGAs, intergovernmental agreements, such as with the schools, or interagency agreements. So the CIP is the starting place, but then there are subsequent steps in order to implement programming or make programming real. Does that help?
Faith?
Well, that kind of muddies it for me even a little bit more. Well, not muddies it, but it is true that in every other time we've amended the CIP, it's come with a budget that is a guiding force in how much budget is allocated to that particular program, right? And you'd be asking for the same thing here, I assume.
Yeah, I think the distinction is for the community, for some parts of the PCEF program, you have a second decision to make around actually awarding a grant. And in other parts of the program that are administered by the Bureau in terms of inter-bureau funding or direct RFPs, that second decision is made either by staff when they award an RFP or by the council if they budget the money. And so it follows different paths depending on whether it's the community grants or a separate program.
That makes a lot of sense. But what you are asking for is for the committee to say, yes, we can amend the CIP to this level. And then it would be then in city staff's hands to figure out how that was actually done in the budget the next time the budget comes up. Okay.
Correct. And I think we've signaled openness to return to you about this program as we develop it. But yes.
Meg?
Another clarifying question, and maybe it's on the next slide, but the original conversation included a package of suggestions, not just this last one. So I just wanted to clarify.
Correct.
Got it.
And you all could, of course, modify this recommendation.
Ranfis?
I have both a clarifying question and probably now with this slide, just maybe recommendation given. But I guess we would love to do a temperature check where folks are at. If you want to lead us on that, Tracy. But I guess my clarifying question here, and Donnie or Eric or Sam, you're welcome to take this one. But in the event that we make a change to the CIP, and as you noted, the budget process is going to continue, and it's going to continue with a new council. In the event that the new council decides to make a change to what is the current proposed budget, making amendments, would that come back to the committee for the committee to further amend the CIP to reflect what the new council would want to do, which I would assume would occur sometime, my assumption here would be April, May. Is that what I guess what would occur if the city decides, new council decides, hey, this new update, we've shifted priorities, we're going this way.
Yeah, I mean, the same thing happened last year, essentially, is if the council ends up in a different place than you are, we have to come back to you to reconcile that.
And Ramfis, I actually was prepped for this question because I had a hunch this would come up because of our prior conversations. In the event, so let's use the natural resources, for example, right? Let's just use this one. You all are essentially updating the CIP to now include 49 million and change over 5 years for the blue-green. City council could, in theory, within that 49, tinker with it. Like, oh, we don't want 3 million for this, we want 4 million for that, right? Because you've kind of created a bucket. But if they said, no, we want to go from 49 to 75, or we want to change 49 million for, the blue-green plan to something else, that would have to come back to you. If they're making a material change to the CIP, like that expands the amount or changes the intention of the amount, yes, that would come back to you based on the code that we included last year that said no changes could come without going to the committee first. Does that make sense? So like
Yep.
within the kind of like right now, like, so Sam's got another RFP coming, and eventually if they're big enough, he's going to go to council to get approval for some of those big contracts. If they don't like the contract for some reason, they can decline it, right? That's their prerogative. But they don't get to say, don't use it for clean energy, make it for, something else, like the best snacks. They can't do that, even though snacks would be good at this time of night. That's not where we're at.
Faith, I'll turn it over to you. And Faith, after you make your comments or have questions, if you could start us off, please, on the temperature check.
Sure. I was going to ask a question about some of the other proposals that were in there. There were a few that were relative to adjustments for inflation. And those appeared to be just city programs. Should we not look at inflation adjustments for every single one of the strategic programs?
That is a great question. So Faith, for transparency, those are responsive to a budget direction that we got this fiscal year, last budget. When it was adopted, there are these directives called budget notes where council says you must do X. And one of those budget notes was you must correct for inflation for these projects. So the bureaus got together and sorted that out. So that was based directly on a budget directive. But you are flagging something that we have been talking about that we're not prepared to bring to you all today because it's much broader, is what are the impacts of inflation beyond traditional COLA? And I know that Eric and Sam have been talking about that quite a bit. But that's not before you today, but is something that's on our radar.
Thank you. Can we go to the slide that has the A through K? Can you just flip to the K real quick and then come back here?
And just a reminder, the H through K are the technical non-monetary changes. The other slide was the ones with money. Okay,
great. Thank you. So Tracy is asking us to start, maybe it was Ranfis that's asking us to start we're doing fist to 5 or warm to cold. I don't know what we do. Temperature check. So warm to cold. On whether or not you're comfortable voting yes on these amendments. On voting to recommend these amendments to the climate investment plan to City Council. So Tracy, do you want to do a roll call?
Yes, well, I wanted to start with you and then I'll call on the other members.
I see. I get to go first. I am cool.
Ramfis?
So wait, sorry.
Warm to cool, whether or not we're just giving whether or not we would vote a yes vote on these, warm to cool.
I think your question makes it difficult without the nuance of
You want to try again?
Could I offer a proposal?
Ramfis, you can, but at this point, can we just go through a temperature check of all the committee members, please?
Sure. So is warm yes? Cool is no?
Well, cool is, I don't think it's a yes, so.
Okay, cool.
Meg?
On the full A through G, I am cool.
D'Angelo?
I agree with Megan on the full A through G. I am cool. For the rest, I believe that's H through K. I'm good with that.
And Alicia?
Yeah, I'm worried that maybe we're all misunderstanding the ask still, but I'm warm.
All right. If we could move back to the proposal, please. So what we, with the committee have, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 cools, 1 warm, and D'Angelo was okay with H through K.
Hey,
So
Tracy,
again,
you didn't get me.
oh, Tracy, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm warm.
Warm, okay. So here is the recommendation before the committee. I propose the PCEF committee recommends City Council amend the climate plan to include items A through G and amend the plan to incorporate the changes reflected in items H through K in Table 1 in this presentation. Branfees.
Can I propose the PCEF committee recommends City Council amend the climate investment plan to incorporate the changes reflected in items H through K in Table 1 in this presentation. Make that simple, get that vote, and then we can get back to A through G today or tonight. But that's my first proposal is let's get through the changes, incorporate H through K first.
All right, so Branfees, you're making a proposal to go through the items H through Q?
K, is there a
H
Q?
through K, correct.
All right, thank you. Yeah, yes, correct.
Okay, so Branfees has made a proposal. Would a committee member second that?
I will second that.
All right, and Sam, here, I just want to clarify, will we go back through the decision-making process, that particular slide that was up? Or are we just taking a vote?
My sense, based on where the conversation was, I think you can go for a vote on that one. I think that the temperature check gave a little sense for some of that already. At least on what Ramfis just proposed.
All right, Branfees, for clarity, could you please restate your proposal and then we'll start with you on the vote, please.
Yep. I propose the PCEF committee recommends City Council amend the climate investment plan to incorporate the changes reflected in items H through K in Table 1 in this presentation.
All right, and D'Angelo, you had a second for that proposal, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so Ramfis, I'll start with you in taking the vote.
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Faith?
I approve.
D'Angelo?
Affirmative.
Alicia?
Yes.
All right, that has passed.
Tracy, if it's possible, if you could, and for the next round of a vote, would it be possible to go back to the slide that includes A through G, and then we can maybe entertain a motion or discussion that could get us to honor a vote that includes this table? I think so. You already did, sorry.
If it's up, Faith?
Tracy, Scott, I would love to hear why you're a warm and if you could just lead us in a discussion on why you would be in a good position to vote yes on these.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have the history that my fellow committee members have, so I've been all of 2 months with PCEF. And part of what I feel my charge is to represent community, but also ensure that the benefits of this climate investment plan are actualized and actually gets out to market to community so that they can experience the benefits. I am a big proponent of doing the infrastructure build or the capacity building with community while we expeditiously get these benefits to community. And what I'm looking at right here looks like a path forward that could achieve that. And so it's saying a yes now and wanting us to be focused on process so that all of my fellow committee members, including me, feel like there is a not a disconnect in the integrity, that we have the ability to have a transparent process where we feel confident and comfortable with how initiatives are brought to us, and getting those initiatives to Portlanders who deserve the benefits of clean energy. So I'm preferring benefits and impact over process for today. And so I do trust that those entities who have done the work, the subject matter experts, we can hold them accountable to ensure that going forward, that there will be transparency here. So that's it, Faith. That's the reason why.
Thank you.
D'Angelo?
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging me. I have heard significant excitement about the community grants and the collaboration for climate action. I feel very strongly that those initiatives are definitely deserving of the increase in funding allocations. I think that those programs in particular have proven to be and will continue to be very effective in centering community voices, especially as it pertains to using PCEF funds to impact our priority populations. So I'm very, very excited for that, and I would love to see that move forward. DC Oliveira specified the inflationary factors, so I don't have an issue with that there. And especially for Cooling Portland, I think the program has been amazing. I've spoken with folks that have been a part of it, that have benefited from it. I myself, in the NAACP and our committees, we've been excited about it and we've continued to speak about it. We regularly send people the phone number to apply for, and we work with people through that process. So I think Cooling Portland is fantastic. I want to be clear. I am not against the Portland Blue-Green deal. I do think, Ramphis mentioned it earlier, we are down a committee member who had a very active voice regarding this proposal. There are aspects of it that other city directors have mentioned that they would love to come back to the committee with these community partners and specifically talk about those relationships and how they pertain to this proposal. So for A through F, I am very much in favor. For G, I am in favor of the concept. I would love to have that conversation go further, give committee members more time to digest what was both presented as well as, the conversation that we've had tonight. Give Robin a chance to weigh in and then move forward once I feel like our committee as a whole has lended their voice to this program.
Ramphis?
I have a proposal, but I'm happy to hold on to that unless other folks want to chime in on their other thoughts.
Are there other, Meg?
Not quite sure what the order is here, but I really appreciated hearing from other committee members, particularly Tracy, D'Angelo, on your perspectives. And I am in alignment with what you said, D'Angelo, just previewing that. And I just want to comment, Donnie, something you said, or into the directors that are here presenting. I think a problem is that we don't have a clear application or process by which city grants come to us the way we do in all the other funding areas. And so what I saw was a 6-page application that didn't meet my needs, but we don't have an application that you clearly fill out, and that's a problem. And that's what we need to fix, because I think I, as a committee member, won't feel satisfied with proposals when we're not getting the same level of detail and information that we get from other projects. And it's just a lot to ask people to review something we got on Tuesday for $50 million and talk about it for 20 minutes. So we have to fix that too. And so if it's been in the works for 18 months, why didn't we hear about it, 3 months ago? And we've heard about Cooling Portland for 5 years. So I feel very confident that I understand that program. So that's where I'm at with all that. If we fix I would love to come back in December on G, but I'm in alignment with what D'Angelo said, if somebody wants to shape that into proposal. But maybe Renfreeze has a different direction.
Faith?
I have two things. One is, Alicia, for you to share where your position is, because you were also warm with Tracy. So I'd love to hear that. And before that, just one question around C through F, no, C through E. You don't really need us to make that recommendation, I assume. I mean, in line with what you said about that the council can determine budget however they decide, so. True, or?
That's probably accurate. I mean, we were out of transparency, we wanted to share what we were doing. Because
Yeah. I appreciate that. Super appreciate that. So just wanted to clarify that you didn't need that necessarily from us.
I think it's even within the range of the currently allowable amount that Eric has discretionary authority to move. So, but yeah.
Cool.
Renfreeze?
I think Faith had a question for Alicia, if Alicia wants to chime in.
No, I'm good, and I'd really like to be respectful of everyone's time. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Alicia. I think I'll make a recommendation. Welcome to any friendly amendments, but given I think where the direction here is, and given I think the proposer is for G and their willingness to come back to answer some follow-up questions, and given I think already the note here around Robin not being here, I propose that we adopt that. Sorry, I propose that we amend the CIP to include A, C, D, E, and F, and we revisit B and G in the subsequent meeting. I believe we can get some follow-up questions and answers to the Blue and Green deal, and then given that we'll be reviewing and getting a proposal for the collaborating for climate action, we can probably do the amendment in tandem together with that. But again, happy to entertain proposals, friendly amendment, but I feel again, A, C, D, E, and F.
And Renfreeze, that was A, C, D, E, and F, correct?
Correct. With the intent to revisit B and G subsequent meeting.
Subsequent meeting December?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. When's our next meeting? Sorry,
we're working on to schedule.
Go ahead,
We're
Sam.
We're working to schedule a meeting with you all the week of December 9th to review the collaborating for climate action proposals. I just want to name that's where we've got things very tight there to hit December 18th. I see hands, so I'm gonna defer to Donnie and Eric to chime in there.
This is sort of a process check for Donnie. For the collaborating for climate action, if through that, if next month the committee decided that they wanted to support a CIP amendment to do that, we could roll that amendment into the decision that we have to bring to council for that award anyway. Would that be how we do it?
I don't think so, Eric. That's what I was going to flag. Ramfis, we'll need to get back to you. If you all choose not to advance G, there's probably another chance for us to update the CIP in advance of a budget action. If you choose to delay B, it's almost a no vote, because we'll update the CIP to include that, and then you are going to make a decision on the grant cycle by the 18th, and there's just no way for us to amend the CIP again. So I guess what I'm saying is G is a true, like, we'll come back to you later, and B might just be a no, keep it at 158 million for this cycle, which is your prerogative. And there, I don't think there's anything, it's a material decision with, if you think there's $300 million worth of projects in the 10 that staff are currently reviewing and committee members.
So my apologies, to clarify here, sorry. So you're saying if we meet in December 9th, it'll be too late to incorporate B.
Because we're taking action on December 4th to update the CIP.
Thank you. All right, so this is messy, so my apologies. My proposal is to amend the CIP to include A through F, given the explanation provided by Donnie around the impacts to incorporating item B. I think it's a good standard to include the inflation adjustments just for transparency and clarity for the committee, setting a good precedent there. And then G, just honoring just the need to follow-up questions.
And D'Angelo, that was the proposal, unofficial proposal you stated too in your comments. With Ramfi's proposal, would you second that?
I would second it if it includes B, so A through F, absolutely.
All right, and I'm going to take Alicia's comments to heart and go back to you, Ramfis, to take a vote on including items A through F and coming back in December and having further discussion on item G. So Ramfis, if you would please vote, start the vote, and I'll do roll call.
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Tracy?
Yes.
Faith? Faith? Oh, okay, you're off mute.
I'm counting how many yeses you need. Yes.
D'Angelo?
Yes.
Alicia?
Yes.
The proposal passes, and again, that is to include items. So items A through F have passed. G will be discussed, I think, Sam, at the December meeting, but I also heard you say that agenda's pretty full.
We will follow up on the December meeting as soon as we can. And we've got a doodle pull out with that with the committee now. We'll review that and come back to folks.
All right. Well, everyone, this was a robust meeting with a lot of brain power. I would like to thank everyone, including the public, for attending the meeting, presenters as well, and of course, committee members. As Sam said, we're aiming to have a meeting in December. So hopefully we will all reconvene at that time, and everyone have a good weekend and a great holiday next week. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Tracy.
Have a good night, folks.
Thank you, Ramfis.